Hey everybody, my name is Justin. Welcome back to the BTR Garage. Today we have another upgrade for my 2002 Ford F250. We're gonna be replacing the OEM mirrors on the truck with some aftermarket telescoping tow mirrors that are a lot bigger and have some more features as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. So the mirrors that I picked up are from Yitamotor. That's Y-I-T-A Motor, Yitamotor. It is a towing mirror, of course, an aftermarket mirror to replace your OEM units on 1999 to 2007, I believe. Ford F250s, 350s, 450s, and I think 01 through 05 Excursions, Ford Excursions. I'll put the links down in the description to these specific mirrors, the kit that I got. But it comes with pretty much everything you need, obviously. The giant mirror itself, I'll hold these up to the OEM size mirror here in just a second. They are heated mirrors. They have integrated turn signals and parking signals in them, or parking lights in them. And then of course they are telescoping. I'm not sure if I can get them all the way telescoped when they're not attached to the truck, but they do telescope quite a bit. And of course back in, and then they come with the appropriate harness for your vehicle. My older truck, I think, is gonna have this round plug in it, whereas the mirror itself has the newer rectangular plug here, and then of course the nuts to attach it to the truck. Let's go ahead and take a look at this thing next to the OEM mirror. So the OEM mirror on the F250 is not too bad, but it does kind of have the rounded edges and then the convex mirror on the bottom, which you really need when you're trailering and towing race car trailers, for example. In my case, these things come in really handy, and the one on here is very, very small. If you take a look at the one on the Yitamotor mirrors, it is huge. I mean, it's 4 inches by 6 inches or so in size, so quite a bit bigger than the one on the OEM mirror. And the OEM ones do telescope as well. Let's see if I can get this out again. That looks like about it. So it's got slightly more telescoping, maybe another 2 inches of extra telescoping room on the mirror itself. So a much better viewing angle with the Yitamotor aftermarket towing mirror. All right, to get these things installed on the truck, we're gonna have to do a little bit of work. Changing out the mirror itself is not too difficult. It's only 4 nuts on the back of the mirror, or on the inside of the mirror, I should say, that attach to the door. The hard part is gonna be figuring out the wiring, because my 2002 F250 is an XLT model. It doesn't have heated mirror wiring or turn signal wiring by default. Those OEM mirrors, all they are is power mirrors, and we're gonna have to tap into turn signal wiring and some other wires as well in order to get the signal functionality on the light bulbs on the outside of the mirror, as well as the heat. So to get started, we're gonna go ahead and take things apart. We're gonna open up the door, get the door panel itself off, get the old mirror off, and start digging around in the wiring, figure out what we need to connect to and tap into in order to get these new features working on the Yitamotor tow mirrors. So getting the door panel off on these trucks is pretty simple. You only need a couple tools. You'll want a 7mm socket for the 2 screws that are in here, or 2 bolts that are in here, a flathead screwdriver or something similar. This is a body panel tool. And basically we just need to take off the power window cluster right here. You can use your screwdriver or the plastic tool, stick it in the front, just kind of pry up a little bit, and then slide it forward. Make sure your windows are already down. You can go ahead and remove all of the plugs from the power window switches. Go ahead and set that unit aside, grab your flathead screwdriver. We're gonna go down to the little light on the bottom, and there's a little crack in it. You just stick your screwdriver in there, pry it back, pull that piece off, set it aside. You also want to grab this top piece above the door, a little black section. It just pulls off with your fingers. Snaps out like that. Set it aside. Now to get the door panel off, there is 2 bolts. The little 7mm bolt up here, another one down here by the light. We'll go ahead and take those off. Now what you can do is go ahead and just kind of pull up and pull away on your door to get it to come off of the door itself. Really just takes a little bit of a pull upwards, and then it'll come away. You want to be careful of the light bulb that is still attached down on the bottom. You can reach behind, twist the light bulb, counterclockwise and pull it out. And then just make sure you're not snagged on anything else like I was. That's pretty much it. Door panel is out. I'm also gonna go ahead and pull this light bulb out of here so that it's not on constantly. You just pull it right out, it will be hot. Ouch. Another thing I recommend doing to make this job a little bit easier is removing the door speaker. That way you can get in behind the door to fish the wiring around. I've already removed a few of the bolts. This is a 5.5 or 5.5 millimeter bolt in here. It is smaller than the ones in the doors. Go ahead and pull your speaker out, and then it's just a regular old pinch clip on the bottom of the speaker. Set that aside. And then to get to the wiring harness for the mirror, we're gonna wanna disconnect that first. You gotta pull away some of the protective layer here. And as you can see, the wire harness for the mirror is right here. So zoomed in a little bit closer, another pinch clip, give it a pinch and then a wiggle, and then that comes out. So that's our harness for the OEM mirror. Now to actually get the mirror off of the truck, we wanna remove this other little protective cover or plastic liner. You don't necessarily need to remove it, but peel it up on both sides to expose the 10 millimeter nuts that are in there. And then you also want to remove the the 2 grommets towards the right side when we're doing the driver's side mirror. Once you have those off, you can see the bolts. We'll give you a closer look here. There's our top 2 bolts, and then the bottom 2 bolts. When you remove these, you want to be careful that you don't lose the bolts into the door panel. Not a big deal. If you need to fish them out, you can go through the speaker hole. And then again, here's our harness for the mirror itself. So we're gonna go ahead and start taking the mirror off. This part of the process, it does help to have a little helper on the other side to grab the mirror so it doesn't go falling off onto the ground. Otherwise, you're gonna have to figure out how to do one hand holding the mirror and one hand undoing the nuts on the inside of the truck here. So I'm gonna start on the lower side, and actually I needed an 11 millimeter socket for the OEM bolts on my 2002 truck. I think the 10 millimeter nuts are for the replacement mirrors, and you wanna be careful again when you're doing this that you don't let it fall into the door. And it's kind of tricky on this one anyways, in the bottom. Using a screwdriver to hold it into place. So we got that one out, all right. All right, and the last bolt obviously is the one where, Shelby, now you wanna make sure you're holding it. Is it coming loose? Whoop, okay, got it. Okay, easy. We'll fish the harness out through the back. Hopefully, there we go, perfect. All right, now that we have both mirrors off of the car, again, we'll take a look at the OEM versus the new Yitamotor mirror. The Yitamotors are pretty enormous compared to the OEM mirrors. And we'll take a look at the bases here, or the mounting bases. You'll notice on the new mirror, it has these rubber grommets over the bolts. You can pop those off. And then it's ready to mount. What I'm gonna do though is actually take back some of the sleeve on this wiring harness so I can access some of the wires in there. And what we have to figure out is which wires in the truck are gonna activate the signals and the heat as well. Now my favorite part is getting ready to wire everything up. So the power mirror, the mirror motor that actually moves the mirror, is all part of the OEM wire harness and will attach to the appropriate pins on the new mirror's harness. And actually I noticed on my truck, I have the new style harness. It didn't have this round one like I had thought that I showed earlier. So it does have the correct rectangular type of plug on the truck door. So that makes things a little bit easier. So what I did, as you can see, I pulled back some of the sleeve here on the wire loom. And what we need to do is splice into a few of these wires and attach those to the appropriate wire on the truck itself. So I got the wiring schematic from Yitamotor. They basically send you this little paper and a note with the various colors of wires and what they do. So those wires are all in the harness here. So the blue wire is actually the side marker or the running light. So it's the lower light on the back of the mirror here, which would be that one. Your black wire, of course, is your ground. The gray wire in here activates the heat. on the mirror. The red wire on here activates the turn signal, and then the orange, white, yellow again is for that window mirror motor. Sorry, the mirror motor, not the window mirror motor. So those are all included in the OEM harness, so we don't have to worry about those. What we're gonna do is splice into the blue wire, we're gonna splice into the gray wire, and we're gonna splice into the red wire in here using common little plastic splices that you can get at a hardware or electronics store. And then what we have to do is run the spliced wire. We'll have to find some extra wire I've got in the garage here, and we gotta run those through the door into the cabin of the truck, and I'll show you where all of the wiring is underneath the fuse box. And then on the F250, the wires you need to tap into for the truck itself. So left-hand turn signal or driver's side turn signal is a green wire with a white stripe. The right-hand turn signal is a white wire with a blue stripe. For the running light or the parking light, you can use any brown wire in the truck, and that will go to the blue wire on this harness. And then the heater wire, we're gonna have to figure out what we wanna run that off of. You can use any power source in the truck. I don't know if we'll do it on the key-on ignition wire, and that way the heated mirrors are on all the time, or what I want to do is tap into that power source and then put a switch or a relay on there that I can mount somewhere in the truck. That way I have an on-off switch for the heated mirrors. But for now, what we're gonna do is get the mirrors mounted back in the truck, and then at least try to get the signal working and go from there. So back in the truck, we're gonna start by taking the front panel off below here. And these are just little push button twisties that push off, or press them in rather, and then twist them counterclockwise to get them off, and then the panel just drops right down. Put that aside. Now what we'll do, and I'll try to get the camera in here for a better view, but you basically expose all of the wires underneath here, and you just have to go digging through to find the right wire. So what we're gonna look for is that green wire with the white stripe. That should be our left-hand turn signal, and then we'll know which one to splice into on the inside and which one that goes to on the mirror itself. The other thing we gotta do is pop the boot out in the door here, because that's where we're gonna run the wires through. So now most of the wiring is exposed. As you can see, I unhooked the fuse box as well, and it's just kind of hanging down here. There's 4 bolts that screw it in on the top, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, the other one's down here. And you can kind of pull that aside to get a better view of what's going on here. But as you can see up in the top section, we have exposed the wire loom. So this guy up in here, you can see we've got our green wire with our white stripe. That's our left turn signal. And then our white wire with the blue stripe being our right-hand turn signal. Now the brown wire for the running lights can be found back here. Pry off your headlight switch. It just pops out like that. You'll notice we have the brown wire down here, which was already tapped into for something I'm not quite sure. For some reason my truck has an extra bundle of wires down there. I'm not sure what it was for, but anyways, your brown wire for the running light is in this clip here. That's what you'll use to power the running lights on the mirrors. So with those wires identified, I can now go ahead and grab some extra wire that I have and start running it through the door into where the wire harness is for the mirror behind me here, and then run it into the cabin. And once we get everything run properly, we'll splice into those wires and then splice into the harness on the mirror side. Now for my wiring, I have an assortment of different colored wires. What I'm gonna do is match the new wiring the best I can to the wiring on the mirror harness itself. So if you remember, we had blue wire on the mirror harness. That's this here, or this one here. So the blue wire is for the side markers of the running lights. So we're gonna use the blue wire for that. The black, of course, is the ground. I'm gonna use the white for the heat, even though the heat is the gray wire on here. I couldn't find any gray wire. And then the red I'm gonna use for the turn signal wiring, which is the red wire on the mirror harness. Now it doesn't matter what color wiring you can use. You could use whatever you want. Having some sort of color coding just helps out a little bit. Now if you remember, for our turn signal wiring, the red wire from the mirror harness is gonna go to the green with the white stripe for the driver's side, and then the white with the blue stripe for the passenger side, so we'll get lengths of wire to run those, or the running lights is going to go to the brown wire, which is on the light switch, headlight switch, and again that is going to go to the blue wire on the harness. And here's my new little wire harness, very simple. It has the red, white, and blue wires. The red wire, of course, is going to go to the green with white stripe wire on the driver's side for the turn signal. The blue wire, again, for the running lights or the parking lights, and then the white wire will eventually go to a power wire for the heat in the mirrors. And then you'll want a tool like this, a flexible rod tool or something that you can use to fish the wiring through the door panel and the door boot, between the door and the console of the truck. We're gonna go ahead and start fishing the wires through right now and see how that goes. Now the visual for this is gonna be very bad because it's impossible to see what you're doing up in here, but if you stick your hand and finger through the door jamb where the boot is, you can reach into the inside of the truck and see where it's going to be coming through, where your wiring needs to go. So I'm going to try to get the wiring fished through there. Now the wire is through the door jamb. I have my tool through the boot on the door side and clamped onto the wire loom that I fished through there. Now hopefully the goal is that we can pull that loom through into the door. We'll see if it works. Help it through from the inside. Sweet, worked perfect actually. Got a little lucky. So there's our wiring on the door side now. So what we can do is use this wiring to splice into the mirror harness. We'll mount up the mirror harness and then we can start getting everything hooked up. So putting the new mirror back on, this is again where you'll want to have a helper. Can you hold this side please, Shelby? And you want to take, you got it? It's a little heavy. Got it? You need to fish your wiring harness back through the hole where the original one came out. Kind of slide that down towards the speaker hole. Okay, bring this up. Align your bolt holes. Okay, so we got that there. All of our bolts are through. I did put thread lock on the bolts and I'm reusing the nuts that came off of the OEM mirrors. Think you can hold that up like that, Shell? Yeah. Got it? We'll start threading these back on here, hopefully. So with the nuts all tightened down and snugged in place, the mirror is solid and the fitment is pretty good. I think on the upper side of the mirror here on the top of the triangle, it's a little bit off of the window body, but it shouldn't be a big deal. And when you're tightening down the nuts on the back of this thing, you do have to kind of wiggle the mirror to get everything to kind of fall into place. You'll kind of hear things clunk into place as you're tightening them down. But tighten them up good and snug and then we can move on to actually wiring this thing up. So here's where my wire harness from the mirror, the new mirror, comes up into the door and connects to the OEM harness right here. And instead of splicing into the wires up here, I decided I'm going to go down into the door hole behind the speaker. I'm going to cut a little bit of the shroud off right here and then splice our wires from the inside of the truck into here and then tape things up with electrical tape. And then I think we should be good to go and then splice these wires in on the inside under the dash. So the wiring is all spliced in to the mirror, the wiring that goes to the inside of the car. So you can see we have all of the spliced wires on the red, white, blue, and then the black ground wire I actually soldered together. We're gonna take this black ground wire and just drill it or screw it into the door panel, probably up here or something like this. But now the next step is to tape all of that up with electrical tape, grab our harness, fish it back through the door, and then we'll be done with the door side. So taking a look at the completed door side, we have our harness clip back in there. Here's our ground wire, and I actually drilled a little hole, scuffed away the paint so we have raw metal, and put a wired terminal on the end for the ground. And I'm actually gonna leave this stuff down here untaped at the moment until we tap into the wires under the console. As you can see, I pulled the fuse box back, and we need to get two of the wires, the blue and the red. Those are gonna go way up into here, splice into the signal wires and the other wires that we need to get this thing up and functioning. All right, so we are all wired up on the driver's side. Let's see if we can get you a good view of the splice. Up here you can see the red splice with the red wire into the green wire with a white stripe. And then for the running lights, we put our blue wire from the mirror and splice that into the brown wire up here on the switch for the lights. There's actually another splice in there, but ours is the red splice with the blue wire. But now we got the basic wiring hooked up. There's only one thing left to do, and that is to test it out. So let's take a look. All right, here we go. Let's plug the ignition back in. All right, go ahead and test out the parking lights. And I'm looking in my viewfinder on the camera. It looks like it's on. Very good, that worked. How about the blinker? And we have a blinker, awesome. So everything worked. Turn that parking light back off, so that's off. So during the daytime, this is what your blinker is gonna look like. At the nighttime, when you have your lights on, or the parking lights on, or your running light, you've got that lower light on there all the time. And I plugged my power mirror switch back in. Let's make sure the mirrors work. They do work. They're actually moving side to side and up and down. So great success. Everything worked. We got the wires right, so that is a plus. Now we got to figure out that heater wire. Now for providing power to the heated mirrors, there are a few things to do, and this can become a little bit tricky depending on your truck. My Ford F250 fortunately has an easy way to do it, but basically what you want to do is find a switched 12-volt power source, or I think they call it a hot on run power source. Basically when you turn the ignition to the on position or you're in the running mode of the truck, that particular wire has power going to it. So what you can do is either find a switched 12-volt power source, splice into it, run a wire direct to your heated mirrors wire. In my truck, it was that white wire that I ran through the inside. It was the gray wire on the mirror harness. And then what that will do is power the heated mirrors all the time. I think that's the way Ford does it from the factory when you have factory installed heated mirrors. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I've read in some of the research on the internet. But what I did and what I'm gonna do in my truck, I wanna actually have it on a switch, an on-off switch where I can toggle the heat on the mirrors when it is needed, because I don't really use the heated mirrors or need it all that much here in Denver, Colorado, because we just don't get iced over mirrors all that much. So what I did is I grabbed a schematic of the fuse box and all of the various fuses in there, and I have one in my truck. It is fuse F229, which is a 10 amp fuse that says customer access. So this is a fuse you can use to power anything you want in your truck, whatever it might be. In my case, we're gonna use it to power the heated mirrors. And we'll show you how to test that fuse, make sure it's a switched 12-volt power source in a second with the test light. And then what I got is this little deal here. It's kind of a fuse adapter. This plugs in to the fuse box. It has an additional fuse position on it and a wire which will actually run for the power source for the heated mirrors. And then I have this little switch. I'm gonna give you a close-up view of this so you have a better idea. So here's the little mini add a fuse device. So basically this fuse plug right here plugs into my number 29 10 amp fuse slot. Obviously I have to take out the 10 amp fuse that's in there. Then what you do is place that 10 amp fuse on the close side, or the left side in this case in the picture, and then that will power anything that might be on the truck side of it. Now to power our heated mirrors, we're gonna use a 5 amp fuse. These mirrors I think roughly take 1.5 amps of power. So we have a 5 amp fuse that we put in there, and then this wire will go to the power wire on my switch. Now this is my little switch that I have. This switch is good for up to 30 amps. And as you can see, it has an on-off toggle, a little red light that will light up, which we'll show you in a bit. And then on the bottom, the way you wire this thing, the earth is your ground, so that's the top prong. The middle is your load, that's gonna be the mirrors, so I'm gonna hook up my white wire to that. And then the bottom is our supply. That's gonna be the supply wire that comes off of the little fuse adapter down here. So we're gonna wire that up accordingly. I'll show you how to test out the fuse here in a second. So back in the truck, we've identified where my fuse number 29 is, which is right up in here. Obviously you can't see it, the camera angle is hard, but if you have the diagram, it's easy to find out. So we have our test lights. This is what we're gonna use to test if there's power going through that fuse. Basically ground the test light to an existing ground in the truck. We'll go ahead and put it on that fuse. There's little metal pins at the top of the fuse that you can stick the test light into. As you can see, the test light is not lighting up, which means there's no power to it. So we'll grab our key, turn the ignition to on. So our ignition is on. We'll stick the test light back on the same fuse, and you'll notice it is now lighting up. So that tells us that we have switched 12 volt power to that fuse, and that's the one we can use our little fuse adapter on. This guy here, if you remember, we just looked at it. So what we'll do is take the 10 amp fuse out of fuse slot 29, replace it with this, and then put those fuses back in there. Once we have that in there, we'll actually run the power wire, which is this wire here now, into the power supply on the switch. And I'll probably mount the switch up on the dash here somewhere. Just drill a little hole and then mount the switch in there, and then finish up the wiring. So we're gonna go ahead and get that started, and then show you how everything looks when we get that together, and then finally get the other side mirror on as well. So the wiring is all connected and run for the most part. I have the little fuse block piece up in there, which is that guy there. The red power wire actually runs through this hole up here in my dash. My truck being an XLT, it did not have any kind of function switch right here. I know other trucks with higher trims have a button for something there. I'm not exactly sure what, but I was actually able to take that out, drill a hole in it, and make my little switch part of that hole. So now I actually have a switch that fits in there. The switch itself almost fit in the hole, but not quite. So I had to modify the plug that was there to get the switch to fit. Now you can see I have all the wires hanging out of the hole. We'll plug those up to the switch in a second and test it. The white wire is going to my only mirror that's plugged in just with a temporary connection. This is my driver's side mirror heat wire. And then of course we have the ground, which I grounded to a existing ground inside the truck, which is just right up in there. So what we'll do is hook up my switch to the proper prongs, stick it in there, and then test it out. All right, so we'll test this thing out. Obviously, if I flick my little switch here with the key off or the truck off, nothing is gonna happen. The little light on the switch is not coming on, and the mirrors are cool to the touch. So switch is off. Go ahead and turn the truck ignition on. Turn my switch on. My little red light came on, so that's good. And you're kind of gonna have to take my word for it. There's no indicator on the mirror that shows if the heat is on or not. So we'll check it here in just a second and see if it's getting warm, which it's already getting warm. I can feel it. Yeah, so that's definitely getting warm. I can feel it on the back of my hand, and I'll let it sit here for a couple minutes to see how hot it gets, but it's actually warm to the touch and seems to be getting warmer by the second. So yes, 2 thumbs up. The heated mirrors work. We have the little switch. Let me take the camera off and I'll show you the switch. So there's our little switch. Turn that off so you can see it a little bit better. Got that mounted right above the trailer brake controller. And you can see if we switch it off, the light goes out, so that's an easy indicator to tell if your heated mirrors are on or not, and came out pretty good. All right, so pretty happy with how that came out. Now that that part is done, we can go ahead and start working on the passenger side mirror. All of the wiring is complete for the most part, other than tapping into the right-hand turn signal or the passenger side turn signal. That's the only other wire we have to splice into. The heat wire is there, and the harness takes care of the rest of the wires. And then we have the ground, of course, on the passenger side, but we're gonna go ahead and put that on a time lapse. Everything on the passenger side goes just the same as the driver's side door for the most part. Nothing special there. We'll go ahead and get that off and then hopefully have the final product for you to show. All right, now the passenger mirror is installed. Everything went pretty smooth. You saw in the time lapse that we had to take the glove compartment out. It's just 3 little screws on the underside of the glove compartment and it pops right out. And then of course we had to run our extra wire harness, the red, white, and blue wires for my truck that go from the inside out through the door. And then from there, we run it to underneath the dash on the inside of the car. Kind of just figure out what's gonna be best for your particular vehicle, where you want to run it, and then we tied everything back into the dash where we needed to. Now the wires from the passenger side, they came in up here pretty easily, and then I just ran them across, connected the blue to my blue wire that we ran earlier that went to the brown wire for the parking light or the running light. The red wire, of course, is the signal from my mirror side. That went up into the truck's wire harness, and that one goes on the white wire with a light blue stripe. So again, the passenger side blinker is the white wire with the light blue stripe, and then we just ran that one to our red wire, which goes to the blinker on the mirror. That worked okay. And then the heat is our white wire. I tied all of those together back in here to my switch, which is over there. So the 2 white wires from each side, one from the passenger, one from the driver, came together into the white wire for the switch, or the power wire for the switch. And then of course our red wire down here, which I haven't tucked the fuse box back in just yet. We'll do that in a second. So we're gonna go ahead and get that back together, and then we should have everything all done. All right, everybody, we're gonna wrap it up. That does it for the Yitamotor tow mirror installation on my 2002 Ford F250. Everything went pretty simple. The hardest part is finding out which wires in your truck do what. If your truck wasn't wired for heat or running lights or turn signals like my truck, finding those wires that you need to tap into to activate those features is the most difficult part. Actually tapping into the wires, running the wires, doing the installation is the easy parts. So now I've got bigger tow mirrors. I have features that I did not have on my stock mirrors. Got the turn signals, got the running lights, got the heated mirrors, and of course the power mirrors, which the OEM ones did have, but a big upgrade, much bigger mirrors, and I'm really looking forward to towing with these particular mirrors on the truck. So if you guys have any thoughts, comments, or questions on these mirrors, please leave them down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions or tips as well for other people that are looking at this modification, let me know. We'll put them in the comments down below, and hopefully that will help out other people as well. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's gonna do it for me. Stay fast out there. I'm checking out. We'll talk to you all next time.